welcome back to Shipwrecked Episode 3. I decided I'm going to start every episode with a little recap and intro video, so let me know what you guys think about that idea and how you enjoyed the first one. Also, as has been mentioned a couple times now, this is Episode 3 of the series. So what's about to go down is not going to make a whole lot of sense to you if you haven't seen Episode 1 and 2. I'll go ahead and put a card on the screen now for those of you who'd like to go back and do that. Let's hope we get chunk number 2, Port Sarum, that'd be sweet. Let's hope we don't get chunk number 3, that'd be terrible. Otherwise, let's get to rolling. Didn't really have anything to lose last time, but this one could sting. Ooh, we get lucky and we dodge. Number 3, we get number 4, Melzar's Maze. Not too bad. This was not a chunk I was afraid of by any means, only 31 chunk tasks, and none of them are crazy. You have to get the best in slot Wizard's Hat, which is a drop from the Imp, and then as you can see, looking through this chunk task list, it is just all drops from the Imp drop table, and then a few random goodies that we can literally just pick up, so nothing too bad here. With our combat stats boosted up a little bit from our murder spree last time in Remington, this really shouldn't take us too long at all. But let's get down on the map, open up this chunk, and get started on these tasks right away. I hadn't shown this plugin up until this point, but if you'd noticed in any of the clips that the background looks kind of dark and faded, that's actually because of this plugin I use that is specifically made for Chunkman accounts, and it allows you to put a shader on chunks that are not unlocked for you, and then to unlock one chunk at a time and remove the shader in real time. So here is me unlocking our new chunk, and now it looks beautiful and we can get started killing these imps. The spawn for these imps is in the new chunk that we just unlocked, but just like the goblins from episode 1, they do actually wander into the Remington chunk. So I was killing one of them before I had unlocked this chunk because it wandered in, and happened to get the blue wizard hat, which is the best in slot item that I need to get from the imp drop table, so I accidentally completed this before it was even a task. There are 31 drops overall that I have to get from the imp drop table. I will spare your eyes and not put them all on screen, and just put some of the more difficult ones that we need to acquire. As is the running theme of the series, the worst drop rate we have to get is 1 in 128, but this time there are 3 of them, so we'll have to see how our luck goes. And if you look at the inventory I'm selling off now, you will see that we already got the bread dough, mind talisman, chef's hat, and flyer. This is a good inventory for us. We completed our bead collection, so we got one of each of the 4 colors. We got jug, pot of flour, the potion, grain, bucket of water. So yeah, knocking out this drop table nice and easy. Unfortunately, none of it's useful to us, so we are gonna go ahead and sell it all off to the store. The imp kill count is starting to rise, and with that, so are the stats. We're currently working on strength, and there it is right on cue, level 25. Going to switch over to attack now and see what we can get that up to before we finish this drop table. Missed the recording of the level because that's what all the cool kids do these days, but if you look in the message box down in the bottom left, you'll see we just got our attack to level 23, and these fiendish ashes are actually a half-decent source of prayer XP. So with this last one, we should also get 18 prayer. Not bad. There it is, level 25 attack. Always feels good to even out the stats. Now we have 25 attack and strength, as you can see here. So we'll switch over to defense now, get that up to 25, and make all these grinds even easier. Same as last time, I didn't end up getting a recording of every single drop, so we'll end off the chunk by taking a look at the loot tracker. We had great luck with this drop table. We ended up only having to kill 115 imps to complete it. And with that, we can check off the pot, bread, and cooked meat. And with that, we've completed and defeated another drop table. Taking a quick look around before we move on from this chunk, we have a nice inventory full of food here. We ended up getting these law runes from a hobgoblin that wandered into the chunk from the nearby chunk, and we did pick up the blue wizard head as well. Looking at the stats, we got 25 attack and strength. We didn't get to start our defense training. We did pick up a fair amount of prayer levels, and I think all this sets us up really well for whatever we have to take on in our next chunk. And speaking of that next chunk, since this chunk was so simple and short, we're actually going to jump right back into the chunk picker and roll a new one. If you're enjoying this series so far, please take a second to like and subscribe. Welcome back to my favorite part of the series, the chunk picker. As you can see in the top right corner here, we got 31 out of 31 tasks complete. We got our blue wizard hat, and we finished the imp drop table. Nothing too crazy here, just had to bang it out. The worst that we had to deal with was chasing down the imps on 1 agility, because as you know, when you attack them, they randomly teleport away, and you just gotta find them and chase them down. But if that's the worst we have to deal with, that is not too bad. I'll quickly go over again the implications of each of the chunk rolls so that we know what we are getting into. Chunk number 1, the Asgardian Ice Dungeon, would require us to cast Fire Blast, which would require level 59 magic, which we would have to train all the way up to 59 magic on drops from these monsters. They have decent drop rates and amounts, so there are worse ways to train magic, but it is also not ideal. We would also have to burn yew logs and chop yew logs, which require level 60 woodcutting and fire making respectively, because we'd finally have access to an axe in the form of a drop from the ice giant. We would also have access to nature runes, so we would have to do some awkward smithing because we have our mine here with our pickaxe, which we've already saw in episode 2, and we have our smithing anvil down here, and we can get a hammer from the goblins here, but it wouldn't actually be that bad because we're gonna have to kill all these monsters so many times anyway that we would just stack nature runes passively. There are worse ways to do it, as you will find out in a moment. Moving on to chunk number 2, this is still my ideal chunk roll. These shops would be fantastic. We'd just be able to buy runes to train magic. We'd be able to get ourselves an adamant battle axe. We'd have good access to food finally. We'd also be able to fish, which is also another upgrade to our food sources. I would still have to purchase enough runes to get level 59 magic for Fire Blast, but because we'd have the rune shop, it just doesn't really scare me. Anchovy pizza, I can't remember exactly what cooking level that takes, but not too bad again because we have the food shop. We have another range even in there, so yeah, this would just be a huge upgrade for the account, and I'm really hoping to get it. And going from the good to the ugly, we have chunk number 3. Still, this is the chunk that we are trying to avoid. Looks pretty innocent at face value, but when you start to dig into it, it gets pretty ugly quickly. So wearing adamant armor is easy. We'd be able to buy that from the shop Wayne's Chains, which is a great name. And then we'd also have to get our level 60 wood cutting and fire making for the yew logs. And the way that we would obtain our iron axe is by smithing one. And it took me a minute to even piece together how we would be able to smith one, but we have access to air runes through the air wizard, and then there's also the fire, earth, and water wizard here, so that would allow us to train magic. And then the guard drops nature runes at a rate of 1 in 128. Ooh. So we would have to train all the way up to superheat item off of those rune drops from the wizards and the guards and Anha and Hinkle, and we would have to craft ourselves a gold bar, which requires a level 40 smithing. So yeah, this would be terrible. We would have to kill thousands, 10,000 or more probably guards just to get the amount of nature runes we would need, and also thousands of the wizards to just get the other elemental runes that we need to even train magic up that high. So really don't want this chunk. Want to avoid that at all costs. And our new chunk, the Crafting Guild, number 4, says here that we would have to bake a cake, but it is assuming that we have access to the bucket of milk, which we actually wouldn't have access to because this fence stops us from being able to get around to the other side where the milking cow is. So we'd have to put baking a cake in the backlog for now, but we would have access to this hobgoblin spawn point on this little peninsula, and we would have to just complete their drop table. I guess the biggest bonus of getting this one, if we were to get it, is that they drop nature runes at a rate of 1 in 64 instead of 1 in 128. So if we were to then get chunk number 3, this would give us slightly better access to nature runes, although not ideal in the least. So with all the details taken care of, we now know what we are rolling for and what it means to get each of these different chunks. That means we can head into rolling. We didn't get screwed last time, but we also didn't get Port Sarum, which I really wanted for the different reasons I've already explained. So I'm really hoping that we can get lucky and just get that one now. And obviously, we do not want number 3. So let us see what fate has in store. Ah, the Crafting Guild, okay. It's not what I wanted, but it also isn't that painful. It's pretty similar to the last chunk, actually. It's just one major drop table to complete. I say major, but this one's even smaller. We talked about this cake. We can't actually cook that. Get the steel weapon upgrades. That'll be nice. And there's really not a whole lot on the drop table, so this shouldn't be too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and backlog making a cake and the killing of the cows and calves because, as I mentioned, I can't reach them. And all backlogging does is takes them off the chunk task list for now so that I don't have to look at a bunch of tasks I can't complete. We'll go ahead and bring them back in when we do have access to them. But for now, let's get into the chunk and see what there is to see, even though I know it's just hobgoblins. It didn't cross my mind to give you a proper tour of the Melzar's maze chunk because there really wasn't much to see, but I'll go ahead and do that now before we open up the new chunk. We can't get into the actual maze because it's locked behind a quest, and so are both of these transportation methods. And this house over here is just for a quest that we also can't start. So the biggest thing we have here that we'll use in the near future is these yew trees. Whenever we get an axe, we'll have to get level 60 wood cutting and level 60 fire making to chop and burn them. This chunk didn't come with any music tracks either, but the new one comes with 3, one of which we are jamming to now. That is Nightfall, and then we also got access to Miles Away and A Long Way Home. And with that, we can speed our way on over to the new chunk and give it the old unlock. There it is. It's just as beautiful as you imagined, isn't it? So yeah, there's the Crafting Guild and all those beautiful cows that we don't have access to, which is a shame because it would have sped up the time it takes to gather food. We also can't access this mine, but that doesn't really bother me. And as you can see, we're just one tile short of being able to get around this building. So yeah, that is why we're stuck on this south side. And the main feature that we have is where I'm headed now, which is the Hobgoblin spawn, which is way out at the end of this very long peninsula. There are tons of them, so the nice thing about having to complete their drop table is I'll never have to wait for them to spawn. But unfortunately, they are level 28. I could probably take out 1 or 2 now, but it would take probably a whole inventory of food. So I'm actually going to head back to our best friends Anha and Hengel and just get the combat stats and prayer stats up a little bit.
Hey Henja, do you mind if I murder your parents a few hundred more times to beef up my combat stats so I can kill enough hobgoblins to complete their drop table? I know it's inconvenient, but I swear it's only so I can complete a chunk task and then I'll stop bothering you. I promise I'll. Oh. Okay then. I'm back.
28 attack, 29 strength, 25 defense, and 21 prayer coming in. Let's go montage out this hobgoblin drop table. 292 kills later, we find ourselves with a completed drop table with 53 limpwort roots, 11 steel daggers, and 18 law runes. And that marks another chunk complete. Just to give you a little insight into what it took to complete the Hobgoblin drop table, I have on screen for you a sped up version of one full run of me killing hobgoblins. My stats were barely good enough to take these guys on, so even with a full inventory of food and prayer flicking, I was only able to get a sad 8 kills per trip. If you remember from the montage, I had to kill 292 total to complete the drop table, so if I was only able to do 8 per trip, that means I had to do about 36.5 trips. With each trip taking about 16 minutes, that would math out to 584 minutes, or about 9.7 hours of this riveting gameplay. And with that, we are going to bring a jam-packed episode 3 of the Shipwrecked series to a close. If you made it this far, thank you so much for your support. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are greatly appreciated. We'll be starting episode 4 off with the chunk roll. Until then, goodbye.